Hey guys, my name is Alex Sabatino, and I'm a sophomore at Lycoming College in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Today, I'm going to talk to you all about intervals. I'm going to tell you different ways to identify intervals, different ways to invert intervals, and in the end, you will be able to identify intervals by their inversions. Now, an interval is classified as the amount of space that there is between two notes on a staff. So the first and easiest way to identify intervals is to count the number of lines and spaces that there are between two notes on a staff. Here, I am writing all of the possible intervals that there are, counting lines and spaces in one octave of music. You will notice that when I stay where I started, it's a first. When I go up or down one line or space, it's a second. When I go up or down one line and space, it's a third, and so on. Now, a first is also known as a unison, and an eighth is also known as an octave. That method works great when there's no accidentals. However, in most music there is. So, now we're going to look at ways to identify intervals by counting the number of half steps that there are between those two notes. Here's a chromatic scale, which is every single possible half step in one octave of music. You will notice that there are 13 of these. Here is a chart with every single possible interval in that same chromatic scale, descending this time. You will notice that these notes are all flats or naturals. There are no sharps. This would affect the interval. If I were to put an F flat instead of an E natural, that would not be a minor sixth. It would be an augmented fifth. There are 5 different types of intervals. Capital M for major, lowercase m with a line over it for minor, capital A for augmented, which is 1/2 step above major, P for perfect, which is only used in firsts, octaves, fourths, and fifths, and lowercase d for diminished, which is 1/2 step below minor. Here is how to invert the intervals. There are 2 terms that I'm going to use in this part of the lesson. 8VA is shorthand for going up an octave, and 8VB is shorthand for going down an octave. The first step to inverting an interval is to identify the interval that you are inverting. Let's try one. You should have gotten a major sixth. The next step is to bring either the top note of the interval down an octave or to bring the bottom note of the interval up an octave. The last step is to identify the interval that you have just created. You should have gotten a minor third. Let's try these 2 on our own. You should have gotten a major third for the first interval, then inverted that to get a minor sixth. For the second interval, you should have gotten a major seventh and then inverted that to be a minor second. There are 2 different ways to check your work, and they go along with the 2 methods that I just explained to you. The first method is to add up the numbers in the intervals. They should always add up to 9, and that is because when you stay where you are, it's still a first. Plus 8 for an octave is a ninth. The second way is to make sure that the qualities of the intervals are always opposite. This is why you cannot use enharmonic equivalence. The quality major is the opposite of the quality minor. The quality augmented is the opposite of the quality diminished. And the quality perfect is the opposite of itself. For you visual learners out there, here's a chart to help you remember. The first and the fifth in this chart, diminished and augmented, are opposites of themselves. The second and the fourth, major and minor, are opposite of themselves. And the third, perfect, is opposite of itself. A good way to use this chart is to make sure that the intervals that you are putting as the opposite of each other add up to 6. Diminished and augmented, 1 plus 5. Major and minor, 2 plus 4. Perfect and perfect, 3 plus 3, all add up to 6. Here's a little quiz to see if you can remember everything that you learned today. For the first interval, you should have gotten a perfect fourth and inverted it to be a perfect fifth. For the second interval, you should have gotten a diminished fifth and inverted that to be an augmented fourth. For the third interval, you should have gotten a perfect octave and inverted it to be a perfect unison. For the fourth interval, you should have gotten a major second and inverted that to be a minor seventh.